Here is one of the top 5 most attended presentations in 2020 at Horizon, a user conference dedicated to IBM Planning Analytics and TM1. For those who want to take their development skills to the next level, presented at Horizon 2020, a conference dedicated to IBM Planning Analytics and TM1. Learn to code faster and smarter with ARC, presented by Tim Ryan.
Hi everyone, it's Tim Ryan here from the CubeWise Code team. I'm going to spend the next hour or so going through ARC and going through some of the new features that we've built in over the last 12 months, giving you an idea, a few tips and tricks about how to actually use some of the features, some nice little shortcuts and things like that. To start off, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview about how we're going to run this hour. It's a pretty long time, 1 hour, so I'm going to try and break it up. I think for each of the sessions, we're trying to finish about 5 minutes early. So I'll try and do that so you can go on to the next session afterwards. And I'm going to break it down into 2 sections. So I'll try and do 20 minutes up front and then do another 20 minutes and have a 10-minute break in between where people can ask questions. So I have tried to get 2 screens up. So I've got 2 screens up, so you're welcome to put any questions in the chat. I'll try and answer some of them as we go along, and then you can certainly go through the questions during the blocks that I have after each of the 20-minute demo sessions. So yeah, I've got 2 polls as well that I've got in the platform on the chat there. One is what version of TM1 you're using in production. So that's something pretty interesting to us, and also what are the user interfaces that you're mainly using or your users are using to access TM1 within your organization. So yeah, please answer those if you can. It'd be great if everyone put an answer in there. You can see the results, so you get a bit of an idea also what everyone else is using as well. Let me just minimize that. All right, so I just want to kick off and talk about a little bit of licensing stuff about ARC. In the latest version, 2.1.0, we've actually enabled you to use ARC for free if you're a non-developer. So all the non-developer features, so like the cube viewer, subset editor and things like that, you can just use for free. So that means just normal users can do it. You have all the support for hierarchies and things like that. Also, at the moment, as part of the Horizon, the All Access Pass that people have got, we're offering people a 180-day trial of ARC as well. So that means you get nearly 6 months worth of time to play around with ARC. So that's the full developer features. So you can play around and see if you like it. At the end of that time, it will drop back just to being the non-developer version, which still gives you access to the cube viewer. You can execute processes and chores and things like that. In terms of the developer licenses, we have a subscription model for ARC. The monthly subscription is $30 for individuals. So that's a special price if you're a contractor, individual contractor, or a consultant. You can use that. For organizations with developers, it's $50 a month, or you can pay for yearly, which is $500. Now, for the monthly ones, we just do it on credit card, just to reduce the credit card only. So if you want to pay through normal invoicing and things like that, purchase orders, you can do it on a yearly subscription. If you have any questions about that sort of stuff, just chuck it into the chat. All right, so there's been a lot of things that we've done over the last 12 months in ARC. So I've got a bit of a summary here. I couldn't really list all the features that we've built, but there's been about 520 closed tickets. So that's either bugs or enhancement requests. We've gone from 1.7 to 2.1. I think we went from 1.112 was the end of the 1 series, and then to version 2, and now we've got the second version out of version 2. Big things that have really made a difference to ARC since the last conference really is the rebuild of the cube viewer, subset and dimension editors. So they're much easier to use. You can copy and paste from Excel and things like that, which I'll show you some of those sort of things. Granular control over control objects. So one of the options in ARC now is you can break that down by security objects or whether it's the element attribute cubes and things like that. So there's a lot of fine-grained control. You don't just have to show all control objects or none. We support custom templates and snippets. So you can, within your directory where you're running ARC, when it starts up now, there'll be a couple of directories where these things are saved into. You can go in and edit those. So if you want to have, for example, some standard things you want in your TI processes, or you've got particular snippets that you want to put into a TI process or a rule, you can actually use that there. And I'll go through and show you some of the snippets that are built in. You can also navigate around very easily using some links, and we've got a fair bit of help in terms of showing what variable values there are. Another highly requested feature is a dark theme. So that's also, if you're like into darkness, you can have ARC running in a darker theme, which is primarily a sort of dark black. We've got the favorites list as well, so you can have favorites for each of your objects. You can also snapshot, slice, active forms straight out of ARC. That'll send it into an Excel file that you can then open with perspectives or with the formula mode in Planning Analytics for Excel. Drill through, trace calculation, sandbox support. These are all things that are done in the last 12 months. A time management plugin to help you create time dimensions. So that's got a lot of options in terms of multiple hierarchies and things like that you can do, all the sort of attributes you want for your rules to look up the prior years, prior months, all that sort of stuff. Rule and TI pickers, so you can pick an area, for example, of a rule, or you can actually do the same for a function. So if you want to get a cell get function in your TI process, you can use a picker instead of having to type all the things. A Windows desktop version, so that's something, it's just a wrapper really around the ARC server, the website, but it means you can have the sort of Windows windowing, so you can put windows side by side and things like that. I'll go through that. And the last thing that we've added just in this most recent release, which is pretty cool, is to be able to lock and pin the tabs in the positions where they are between sessions. So there's just favorite things like the session monitor or message logs or anything in particular. You can pin it to a certain location, maybe down the bottom of your page or onto the side, and it'll stay there even after you refresh your page. All right, so let's get into it and I'll show you some things. Let me just jump out of PowerPoint. All right, so let's start off. I just want to show you some of the new parts in here. I'll just refresh my page, just make sure I log in again. So the first thing, maybe one of the more recent things, is the menu system's changed quite a bit if people have seen it prior. There used to be some buttons here which were the menus. We've now swapped that out. We now have right-click options within here, so context menus. So you can see as I navigate around on these particular objects, you can see that I've got context-sensitive menus. So in this case, I can go here and create a new cube or create a dimension from here. Same sort of thing if I drill further in. If I go to a cube, I can do things like creating a cube, opening into a new window. So if I do that there, it'll open the view into a full framed window here. So you can see that I don't have any of the menu and stuff like that. So you can see that full screen. You can also do things like creating your drill through processes and pick lists and all that sort of stuff. And also reorder, as you mentioned, comes from that menu as well. Now this works in most locations as well. So if we go down to a process, for example, I can right click here and select execute to execute a process like that. I can also do that, if I cancel that, I can also do it over here on the favorites menu or on my history as well. So if I go into here and right click, I can execute it from there. And I can also even do this sort of stuff from the summary type menu. So you can see as I hover over these areas, I can right click here and go open a new window, and it'll take me to the rule file in this case. All right, so I'm going to show you the new cube viewer. So there's a couple of different options here that have been added. We now have an optional part to execute it asynchronously. So that means what will happen is it sends off the request and then Arc will poll back. That's pretty important if you're running a long-running views, especially if on the IBM cloud. There's a hard cap of 60 seconds. So anything that takes longer than 60 seconds will die if you're using the IBM cloud. So by using this method, what it does is it goes and requests, first executes the view or the MDX in this case, and then it'll go back to the server and keep on checking until things are done. So it doesn't keep any connections valves. So that's one thing to be wary of if you're using the IBM cloud. So see the new queue viewer, so the panel down here, also allows you to copy and paste ranges. So I can copy that. I can put it into Excel. Like that, I can paste my ranges directly in and out. If I want to, if I go Control A and select everything, copy that, I can go to a new sheet here and paste that in. It'll give the headers as well. Now, there's a whole lot of right-click menus we've also added in here to make it much more convenient. So the nice ones we can do on the cells, so things like trace calculation is available. We can also drill through as well. So these two drill throughs to a database and to another view. So if I do that, it'll drill through that way. But really where the menus are very helpful is over here on the, either on the dimensions here, running the elements. So if I wanted to, for example, click on my operating expenses, I want to drill into that and I want to slice and dice that by my region dimension, which is up here, I can swap that out. So if I click on that, it's now swapped that out. It's put operating expenses up on the top here and put down on the side here, we've got our split out by region. So let's go and flick that back, do it by account. And now we're back to where we started. We can also filter on the side here straight with my right click. So let's go just keep a particular item. But instead, I didn't want to get that. I wanted to get everything under that. I can then right click and go, for example, keep and descendants as an alternative. So that'll give me all of my descendants, or as you might have seen there already, I can go keep and get my leaves. So these are all just little things to make it faster for you to navigate around. Actually, one thing that we've added as well is the ability to expand collapse on columns. That wasn't there also last year. And the same options that you have running down the side here, we can also do over here. So if I right click on here and go keep on February, we can see that I've drilled it down just to that section there. So let's go and try a couple of other nice things. So you can see up the top here, we actually have an undo button. So if I click on that there, I can go backwards from the things that I've just been doing. So that's a nice little way to navigate back around. So you can go back to the particular, each item that you've done, you can navigate around. So you don't have to remember where you were, or if you could do some analysis and then you want to move back to your starting point, you can use those options there. All right, so all of this stuff in terms of the right clicking and things like that is also available within the subset editor. So let's just go back one more. If I click into here, we can either edit the subset editor here, or we can click up on this little button here. So same sort of thing, we can right click here and go keep with children in this case. So I've kept that with my children. You can do nice things in terms of, let's go on to an attribute. This is just an attribute that tells us what type of element we've got here, whether it's an N level or a C level. So let's go right click on that and go filter by attribute. That's going to filter it out so we only get the C elements here. And that works on any of the attributes you might have in here. So let me just show everything. We can jump over to the side here and let's say go expenditures and go filter by attribute. And I scroll back over to the side here and we can see that it's got just the expenditure account. So let's go OK on that. And now we've got all of our stuff. One of the recent things also, we've now got the ability to edit the MDX. So you can actually edit the information directly within the MDX. And what ARC will do is pass that and turn that back into a query that it can understand. The sorting and things like that are also available. So if I right-click in back into my subset editor, we can say, for example, let's go and find this value here. We can go sort by this particular attribute, and it'll sort all of those down the page as well. So it's very quick and easy to do things like that and navigate around your dimension. So I can also do a remove element and descendants to get back to our net income here. And we can unclick that and go OK. Now, I'll show you a couple of things just on how we can show the positioning of the elements as well. So now that I've got this tab up here, I might want to open up some of my administration things that I'm accessing all the time. So say we've got the sessions here. I can drag that down to the bottom like that, and it sits down the bottom. When it's in the bottom, so once it's smaller, I think it's around 30% of the size, you've got this as the full information. Once it gets minimized down to the bottom here, you'll see that it only has the running active threads that are here. So this is the new feature here, is if I go and pin that there, so we lock it, and I might grab my server logs as well. And I can throw that and pin that down the bottom also. If I go and shut this, so I've got nothing here, I've got these both pinned, and I just refresh my ARC session, and you can see that these are pinned down here. So the same sort of thing, if you log out, so if I was to kill my session, because I'm in the browser here, the cookies are still there. If I was to close my session as well, so let's go and do that. And then start ARC back up. We can see they're both down the bottom here. We haven't logged in, so they have no information, but I can then click here and they'll log in straight away and you can get information. There's a few little flags to help you along the way as well. So if I right click here and execute that, actually in this case it doesn't show, but if it's another person that's running and they've got active running things down the bottom here, you can actually see that with a little flag, so you can know what's happening in your model at the same time. You might see there's an alert that's just popped up. That's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, which is the Pulse integration that we've started to work on. So that's something that will enable you to access all of the functionality that's in Pulse through ARC using the tools that we already have in ARC. That makes it a little bit nicer, especially with the developer features, which is like grabbing the rules that have been edited and processes and things like that. Now, I'm going to also go through the thick client, and I've got my little icon up the top here, so let's start this up. So I'm just starting up the desktop version. And the way this is actually working is connecting to the ARC server. So I've got my ARC server running as a service here. And this is sort of the recommended setup really that we'd have. You can run ARC locally, but with the desktop client, if you are running it locally, each time if there's an update in ARC, you'll need to also update the ARC server that gets distributed with the desktop client. If you instead connect to it remotely, you can access it. You can have this option here when you start up. You can use the option to connect remotely, and it will connect to another server. So in this case, I've got localhost, but you'd be typing this to be a TM1 server or whatever the name of your TM1 server is on your network. So let me just cancel that. So let's go and have a look at what it looks like. So as you can see, it looks pretty much the same. The menu's a little bit different. If you want to show and hide this panel on the right, it's Control-M like that. All right, so we can hide that. And then the right-click menus and things like that are the same. So if I jump back in here, and for example, I want to have a look at my, actually I'll change that. I'm going to show my rules here. And then I might want to show over and have them side by side my cube view. So I've just right clicked and opened up into a new window. Now, if you don't know already, if you press your Windows key on your keyboard and have a window open like this and press the right arrow key, it'll throw it to the side like that. And then it'll pop up which ones you want to put on the left. So I can do that quickly. If I click back in here and do Control M, we now have a quick way where we can see our view over one side here, and we also have on the left-hand side, we have our rules, so we can go and do our editing and do that side by side. So if I click back here, I can swap these over. If I click on that, do Windows key, oops, swap this one to the right. So remember, it's Windows key and the right or left key, depending on which side you want to go to. And we can swap it around and do it that way. So if you want to do the side-by-side viewing, that makes it very easy. Oops. So that's Arc for the Arc desktop. Now, while I'm in here, I want to show you a little bit of the features to dump these things out. So I might just shut these so I've got a little bit more screen real estate. So we also talked about you can snapshot directly to Excel. If I open that up, just looks like a regular snapshot, no formulas here. And then if I go on my next option here, if I do a slice, same sort of thing. This will work straight out in perspectives. You can see, oops, there we go, there we go. If I look at these formulas, I don't have perspectives loaded, but you can see we've got the DBRWs here. We've got exactly the same syntax that you would have in a normal perspectives slice. And last one is an active form. It eventually opens up here. And we've even kept the nice colors that have been around forever. So we are working on some features so you can customize these colors and things like that. So yeah, so there's all the abilities to do the same sort of slicing, snapshotting, and active forms that you're familiar with in perspectives. Now that's sort of concluded the first session. So if you haven't got your questions, please pop them in there. I'm just going to have a look and I'll see if I can answer some of these questions. A couple of people, there's one about the dark theme as well. Actually, I didn't show that. So while I'm looking at that, I can jump into here and change it to dark. I'll reload the page. And so there's our dark theme if that's what you're into, all the same sort of features that you're familiar with, but in a nice dark theme. All right, so I'll just have a look at these questions. I'll see if I can answer those. A few people pumping up the dark theme. Just saying about to have the name of the TI when pasting a list of elements in the subset window. I'm not sure what you mean. I guess Gabby's asking about pasting it in. It should go into the same order. Pasting elements in the subset editor window, they display in reverse order. I think they should go through the right order. It depends where you're pasting from. Is that from Excel? Question about slicing into a snapshot or a slice into Google Sheets. Well, you can certainly do snapshots with just in Excel format, which you can use in Google Sheets because it can read Google Excel formats, but not the formulas aren't going to work. The @ symbol in the start of the slice from Ram that's something that Excel does now. So if you're on a later version of Excel, so it's been happening for about a year, or if you're on the most latest version, Excel will automatically append all formulas, most of the formulas with a @ sign to the start of that. So that's just something that happens that Excel does. Arc isn't doing that. You'll see that if you are on the latest version of Excel, any formulas of a particular type, which the DBRWs are, it'll automatically put those @ symbols the first time you open it. Will that work after connected to TM1? It will if I go and open up perspectives. Oops, I didn't want to do Excel. Let me go perspectives. Excel's having a hard perspectives. Let me just kill it off and I'll do that from scratch again. All right, well, that's starting up. How do we get Arc Desktop? You can download Arc Desktop. It's available on our website. So let me just check it here, code.cubewise. So we've got multiple downloads. So there's multiple download options over here. So we've got Windows, Linux, and Mac, and you can see those. So desktop for Windows is one of the options. So you accept that, you can download the desktop version. It only works on Windows as well, so I should point out. Any plans to be able to view applications? You can open, I'm not sure exactly in terms of viewing applications, what you mean there. You can certainly use the applications folder. So if these sort of things, for example, shortcuts are all in there, if you've got an Excel file, that'll download those directly to your system. So you can just open it up like you normally would in Perspectives. So you should be able to use the applications folder as normal. Integration with the Git, that we're really waiting for that to sort of get to a mature level, I guess. I've done quite a bit of research and working with it. There's a few things that don't work that we sort of need to. Once it gets a bit more mature, then we'll certainly be looking at that. Question about how to stop the @ symbol. I don't think there is any way on the latest version. I don't think it matters either. If it's in there, it shouldn't affect how Excel processes the formulas, so it shouldn't matter at all. Someone's just asking about how to bring up the MD expression in the view. So I'm going to go back to my live theme, which is my favorite, and open the Cube Viewer. All right, so let's have a look in here. So this little button up on the top here. So I go into there and you can see there's a few little, got all the details in there. So if I got net income, let's go and change that to operating expenses and see if I can type it right. And you can see it's changed that now. So you can see also the full MDX that it's using. So this is what ends up getting passed through to TM1. So every time you're executing the view within Arc, it's actually executing MDX. So even if you open up a traditional view, which is what this is what's called a native view, not an MDX view. So it's an MDX that converts that all into an expression that can be executed in here. So if I, for example, go and remove this one, which is actually budget, this is an alias. Let's change this one to actual, to the alias, and save that there. We can see it's now just got actual instead of the actual and budget. So that's a nice little thing. We always allowed you to edit in the subset editor, which is this same button up here. So you could edit it directly there, but now you can also do it in the Cube Viewer, which is a nice little feature. If it does have invalid syntax in there, you might be in a little bit of trouble. It's going to tell you that it can't pass it. You can continue on, and there's a few features in MDX it doesn't support. For example, like if you wanted to use calculated members and things like that. So it's pretty much straight up normal MDX. It's going to support, and will support cross joins and things like that as well. Writeback doesn't seem to work with auto @ symbol inserted. I think there's only some. I think that might just be a bug in Perspectives, to be honest. I think that's because it's actually looking for it looks for the cell. It might be fixed, but the way the syntax works actually looks for the DBRW to turn it back to the original formula. So that's probably the problem there. Is trace calculation like you have in Perspectives on the roadmap? I don't know what the difference is. Maybe you can clarify that one, Adam. We sort of use the trace calculation based off what's coming out of the REST API. You can drill through, which is very similar to Perspectives. So if I click onto this item here, I can drill through. So this is drilling through my list. This calculation button will actually open up and tell you what the calculation is. So it sort of does do the same features there. So you should be able to do pretty much the same sort of stuff. If I jump back into here, and do it on, I don't think have anything interesting on this one. So let me just open up here and get actual end budget. That might give us something a little bit more interesting to drill into. So if I go and trace calc that one, drill down, and there we go. We can see the rule down the bottom there and the components. Now, if you do have, it can also help with drilling through into the multiple components, but we just pretty much take whatever the REST API gives us and present that on the screen. So Christian's also saying the @ symbol stops drills as well. Any plans on bringing the transaction log under the administration section? Yeah, that's something I think we've probably talked about that one for a while. That's probably a good one. It's much easier to get out of through the REST API. So I guess you might be talking about just seeing who changed what. Still, the querying is quite slow. TM1 pretty much dumb how it goes through those things. It just loops through the transaction log to find the information. So yeah, so that's definitely one we could add, definitely. Any plans to be able to view application reports without needing to start perspectives? No, not really, Wade, I guess. So to open the Excel files and view them in the web, that's sort of really a TM1 web feature. So it needs to pass and convert the Excel into something that's viewable in the web. Can ARC be used to edit poor MDX views? That's got an outstanding ticket. So that's a new feature in POR where you can store, if you save POR MDX views to the server, so that's a new feature in POR. You can actually save them in the TM1 server rather than the content store in POR. We'll be supporting those. So we've already got the syntax for it, so it'll be probably in the next release of ARC, you'll be able to view MDX, and we'll also give ARC the ability to save to views that you can also view in POR, and the same sort of thing in PA for Excel as well. I think Dwight's just saying about the version in terms of, I think the @ symbols there. So I think you might just have to upgrade. I think that's like a perspectives thing. You need to handle the @ symbols. So maybe everyone needs to upgrade. Nothing is based on TM1 Pi it's pure REST API. So most of it's written in JavaScript, actually, and connects directly through to the REST API. All right. I think Dwight's saying the version of PAC, so maybe they're using perspectives, might be the difference. Maybe you can clarify that one, Dwight, between you and Brad. All right. So next little block here. So we'll jump off questions. I've got a fair few things to get through, and I want to show you some nice little shortcuts and things like that that make you a very productive developer. So let's go and just going to open this TI process. So there's lots of cool little shortcuts that you can get within here. First of all, if I hold down the control key over any variable, it's going to tell me what the actual value is. So I'm just holding down control and moving around my screen here. So for example, I want to see what the cube I'm working with here, I can do that, and it's telling me general ledger. Where it's getting that from is over here from this variable over here. So what ARC's doing in the background is passing through your TI process and generating a list of views and what their values are. It'll even also have those in the context autocomplete here. So in that same one, if I go down to my cube name, it can tell you where the cube name is, what the value is, and where it's actually been set. So prolog 5. If I was, for example, to say S cube name, I can start typing it, press equals, and make it something else. And then if I jump back down here, you can see it's now something else. And if I do control space, it's going to tell me it's something else. It's been set on the data tab on line 5. So that's a pretty cool little feature. You can also navigate to objects. So in this case, the cell, I can see it's got a little line underneath there. So I'm holding down control again and clicking on that. And if I click on that, it's going to take me to the cube viewer, to that particular cube. Same sort of thing. If I've got a execute process, I can control click again. So I've got my control key down, click on execute process. It's got the underline, which means I've got a link. I click that and it's going to take me to the Bedrock process. So that's a quick little nice way to navigate around the things you have within your TI process. Now, that will also work. I'll show you a little bit later when we're doing some debugging. Now, a little favorite little shortcut, which is a recent thing. If you do a word, so I'm just double clicking to select the whole word. If I then press the single quote, it'll surround that automatically straight away. So that'll stop you from having to, do it at the start, do it at the finish and things like that. You can also, if I highlight a variable, you can see that there. You can see, I'm looking on the screen, there's a light little blue line around the other instances within the editor here of that variable. So I can either hold down Control, Alt, and the right arrow key to select them all like that, or I can do, I think it's Control, got to remember this one, Control, Alt, K. So if I highlight there and do Control, Alt, and the letter K, it selects them all. And I can just change that. So let's go and say, I'm going to call that S test variable. All right. So that'll change all the instances like that. And if I click off it, that's done. So that's a really nice little way to do that. So then I can do Control Z to go back to what my original values were. So showing you one more time. So that's just highlighting a particular one, Control, Alt, and K. Select them all, and then you can start typing and you go through and change all of those things. Of course, you can use the find and replace as well. The question someone was saying, does it work in other tabs? When you're doing this, it's working within the tab actually. So each of these editors are sort of individual. So they're each one, so here, here, and here, they're sort of standalone, but you can search through each of them using the replace over here, find and replace. So if I went and said department, like that, we can get a list of them across each of the tabs. So in this case, that one I was just referring to is just in the data tab. All right. So these features also work in the rule editor as well. So I'll show you that in a little bit extra time. But before I do that, I just want to show you how we can debug, and I'm going to do a very simple one so it's easy to follow. That just has some random lines in here. And I'm also going to do it in one where we just have a loop that loops over in here, and we can put conditional breakpoints. So one of the extra features that we have in ARC recently, we added all the list of your breakpoints are always maintained over in the side here, so you can disable them here, or you can even delete them. This is across your server. So, for example, if you're executing a process that connects to another process, you can see the breakpoints for those underlying processes as well. So let me just go and debug in here. All right, so we're debugging. The F10 is our friend here. So the red parts here, by just clicking on an item, that's going to stop at that point in time. So if I then hover, so the thing I was just talking about before, which is hovering over variables, you can see the value of those. And then we can press play to continue, and it'll go through all the way to the end. These breakpoints are defined also on the tab here, and you can actually even do it as an expression. So let's go and have a look on this particular one. So what I'm going to do on this one, I don't want to loop through. This is looping through a lot of times here. So what's that? 100 million times it's looping through. So to go through each one of those would take a long time. So what I'm going to do instead, and what have I called it here? So we've got n count. So we'll just copy that, pop that in there, and go equals 2000 as an example. And let's start our debugging. So when you debug, it'll always stop at the first line here, and then we can just press play. And it's now stopped, and if you hover over, we can see it's 2000. So that's, you can jump into that, it's very easy. The expressions are just like your normal expressions that you would do in TI. So if I was going to do it on a string, I would have to go like this, put my @ symbol there and say test, or whatever it was. Obviously, this won't work because this is this number is the number variable. But yes, that's a nice little way there to actually put a conditional thing, especially if you're going through a TI where you might be hitting a problem. You're loading it from an external data source, and there might be something incorrect on a particular element that's being loaded in. You're trying to insert it into the database on a particular account, and it keeps on failing. You can set that breakpoint to the account values for the elements, and then it'll stop, and you can debug line by line at that point in time. All right, now I want to show a couple of snippets as well, and I'll show you where they actually live. So let's just go back to my boring old one in here. So snippets are available through the context menu here. Now, there's a few nice little built-in things that we can do. And if I'll jump back to this one to show you something else. It's something you're familiar with if you're old debugging TI. We can see all the variables we've got here, but say I want to output them on each line to a CSV file, we can actually just type the word text in here, and you can see all of these different options to output variables. So what I could do here is go and say, let's output the data source variables. So these are all of the ones that are variables that have been defined against the data source. They're the ones that are in here essentially. And we can put those out. And we can also, if we want to, do it with variable names. So click like that, and it's going to use the expand option. It puts the variable name in there as well. So that's a nice little thing. If you're debugging, you want to just dump out your data out of a model, you can do that and see the info for each particular line. Common things that you might want to do. So in this case, we've got a data source here that's an ASCII file. But say if we wanted to make that a view, we can make that by dynamic by just typing the word data source in here. And we've got a few different snippets that'll enable you to specify things. So in this case, I want to change it to a view. So I just click on that, and we've got a variable name to start off with. So say if I have a different naming convention, we want to call that VS cube name. You can see that it's updating the block, so they're all of the instances of those. We tab again, let's go VS view. And then our flags, we can go one tab, flag, tab, and we can fill that out nice and quickly. So that's one example of a snippet. Another one that you might commonly do is to unwind. So let's go and type that in there, dimension unwind. And in this case, let's do the same sort of naming convention, dim name. I can tab, change my dimension that we're actually setting it to. So let's just call that account. And any of these other ones, now I'm pretty happy with the rest of the variables. I can just tab through and I'm done. And so that's now got an unwind. So that's a definite little easy way to get access to those snippets. Now, where do these sort of things live? So there's built-in snippets. And if I just chuck into here, if I go into here and this is my test environment, we can see we've got snippets. So if I go into the my process, you can see this one's the default one. So this has got a list of all of these. See if I can format that a little bit nicer. It's in a format which is called HJSON, but it's very similar to JSON. You can just put essentially your code in here and you use these little placeholders to tab around. So that's how it actually works. The tabbing is I've got the first spot and the second. So if I go and look at my unwind example, we can go and see in here, and it's so the dim name, which is the first part, if you use the same one here, so I've got dim name and 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, that's going to replace all of those spots. So if I wanted to create my own snippet, all I need to do is copy one of these. So let's go and just copy that. I can create a file in here. So my snippets, and change that to JSON extension. And this will enable us now to have a separate one separate snippet within our processes. So what it does is it loads all of those. So if anything that's in the directory here, any of the files that you put in here, it'll load those when Arc starts up. That's a way to add variables there. So let me just keep on moving on. There's lots of stuff to get through. So a couple of things in the rule editor. I want to mainly show the new area pickers, which are available in TI also, the formula and area pickers. But so now say you wanted to add an item here, a new rule. So let's say we're going to do the description. So I want to search by the description. So in this case, for my version, so let's do it actual, and we want to do it for a particular year. We can click down here and go 2010. Let's go financial year. So we can do that instead. Now we can either add that here, so you can see there's nothing at this moment. So just because we've selected it here, it hasn't been added, but we can add it here and add it there. And if you want to, this is automatically inserting the principal element. But if we want to, because it's more readable, for example, to have the alias, we can just toggle that like that, and it'll show us the alias in there. You can also toggle whether you want to do the fully qualified part, which is the year. So we can toggle that off. And you can also toggle where there's a hierarchy name. So if you're in a multiple hierarchy world and you need to specify hierarchies as well as the dimension, you can also toggle that as well. So let's go insert area, and in it goes, you can add that in there. Now on the left-hand side, we can go, on the right-hand side I should say, we can say, for example, use the same, we can use the DB picker. So I'm going to go from the employee cube, for example, and by default, it's going to find the matches that we have here. So you can see it'll match the dimensionality and then insert the default element for the ones that aren't there. So if I insert that, you can see that we've got all of these parts are in my general ledger cube. So they get defaulted to the exclamation mark and name. And then we get the default element on these other ones over here. So that's an easy way to insert those in. Now, of course, we've got the control space stuff in here. So the attributes, for example, if I wanted to insert attributes, you've got all of the attributes for every dimension that's part of the cube, and it's shortcutted like this, so I can insert it in quickly like that. So there's a whole lot of little options in there to include as well. So please try out all those sort of features. Remember, control space to bring up this menu as your friend across all of the editors within Arc. Now, there's a security module that we've been working on for quite a while. It's getting improved over time, getting better and better. I just want to show that there quickly. For example, if you're wanting to, I've got a few different users within here. These are all the sort of test sort of users. But if I was wanting to add a particular user, so say we've got down here, we've got a particular, who we're going to copy. So let's say this, where is he? This person, Clayton Lewis, they're part of the finance group and this TP everyone group. So if I'm going to go and add a new user, and let's call them Jim Smith for a very plain old name, and let's go and find that user. So it's Clayton, so I just type it in. And if I select Clayton Lewis, effectively it'll grab it grabs their groups, and then we can save them. So it's a very quick way to grab a particular person, clone their groups, and put them into the system like that. So we can now see Jim's now been added, and we've got him in here. So that's a quick way to add that. Now we have also added security fresh over on the side. The audit is a pretty cool feature as well. So if I go into my groups here, actually, let's do it here. I can do it even by user. So I'll go to Clayton again and click on the audit here, which will throw it into a separate tab. It'll show all the permissions that he has got based on the groups that he's part of. If there's element security, it'll give you this little cube icon here. The same on cubes. It'll tell us what are the cubes he has access. He has none on all of these, but has access to the finance cube. So I can open up the finance cube, and you can see we've got the element attributes on these ones also. If I click on that, it'll take us directly to that cube. and we can see the permissions there. Another way to navigate around to these objects as well, I was wanting to mention earlier, you can also do it here. So we've got this little quick links button. So if that takes me to the rule, if there is one, excuse me. We can also do that from our cubes. So for example, you can see one that's got quite a few extra things in there. You can go to the drill assignment cube, it'll jump you directly in there. You can also do it to the pick lists, it'll jump us in. For dimensions as well, so if I go into a dimension, it'll take us to the dimension editor or element security if it exists, or the element attributes cube as well. So I'm jumping through the element attributes and you can see that. That's all some nice stuff. Now, one of the other things I wanted to show you about the security, so let me just jump back into here. All right, so last feature in here is the ability to impersonate. So you'll see that the people who are admin have this nice crown icon emoji. What I can also do, so if you find the person has an issue with their security, you can click on this icon. So I'm going to go impersonate Tim, and I'm going to do it as, so I have to log in as myself, but it's telling you it's going to impersonate them. If I go log in, and now you can see, I only get to see the things that that person has access to. So you can see in this case, they don't have access to chores, they don't have access to all the processes, they do have access to all of the cubes. So that's a quick and easy way. You can go in here and everything that you do from this point on is actually as that person. So as the person that you're impersonating, so including updating data and things like that. So use with caution. So let's just log back out. And I'll jump back in as myself. Last feature I wanted to show quickly is just we've started integrating Pulse. You saw the alert show up before. So if I log in, let's go and run my long-running process here that just loops around. So where we've started with the integration is the source control. So this is all the stuff that's been edited within TM1, but has been saved to Pulse, and we can actually see what has happened. So you can see the Pulse alert has popped up here as well. We also get notifications just like you normally would in Pulse when an object's been changed by a particular person. But you can see this was an alert to say if it's running over, anything's running over 10 seconds, it'll pop up here. So you can see in this case, I've just removed some spaces out of there. So I can jump back and see here, let's go and look at a process. So it'll say in this case, let me find something a little bit more interesting. So let's go backwards. Let's go all the way back to January and refresh. This is going to give us all the changes that we've made over the time. So this is for each object, how they've been changed. Let's go and have a look at this one. So you can see in this case, added a variable here and removed this debug text output. And so if we look back here, you can see what it actually looked like at that time. So this is showing your TI process, what it was on the 16th of the 8th at 9:46. So when it was changed at that point in time. So that's a pretty nice feature. You can also, if I jump into a object here, we can see the history of that particular file. So it'll just show that particular file. And we can even roll back to this version. So if I click on that, it'll throw us into Pulse, create a package on the fly, and enable us to roll back to that particular version of the, in this case, I can't remember what I clicked on there, on this rule. So that's now put the rule back to be the version at what is at that point in time. So yes, that's another cool feature, and we're going to be adding lots of Pulse integration as we go along over the next 6 months to a year. So hopefully most of the features that you have in Pulse, you'll also be able to access in Arc. All right, I'm pretty much close to up to time, so I might try and finish off by answering some questions in here. So I'll try and go back to where I was up to. I think I answered about the variable name. You have to use find and replace to update the variable name in multiple tabs. You can't do it through that nice little shortcut that I showed you. Just asking about when you go step over from something that's in the metadata tab to the data tab. It should stop. I think if that's the case, you should just create a ticket, because that might be a bug in the REST API. So when we do step over, there are a few little quirks about how step over works. I think even if you're stepping out of an underlying process as well, it sometimes, there's a couple of examples, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but where it didn't work as expected. We faced an issue with the debug feature with the instant crashes. So yeah, I don't know what version you're on of TM1. I would say the debugging, again, that's just something that's happening on the REST API. It's crashing for some reason. It's causing a lock in the background. So I would say log that one with us, and then we can pass it on to IBM, or log that directly with IBM. Let me just scroll back up here. This keeps on dropping down to the bottom. Someone's asking about, the shortcuts. Yeah, you can see all the shortcuts are over here on the keyboard. Shortcuts are in here. So these are those line operations. That one where I had the Control-Alt-K was actually Control, all the documentation says it's Control-Alt-L, but it's actually Control-Alt-K, sorry, I should say. Impersonating requires user password in any way, correct? No, you don't need to you need to be able to log in as yourself to impersonate another person. You don't need the password of the person you're impersonating. Add user in Arc or work with mode. The moment we don't have integration with CAM5, so when you're using groups, so you want to add people through CAM, we have to integrate that with CAM, which isn't so easy to actually bring up the list of and show the list of groups and users within the CAM environment. So it's maybe something we'll get to, but we haven't got to it at this point in time. Is there a TI process generate variables based on the data source or change the data source? Yes, you can. Just move this little thing. When you're in a process, when the data source changes, you can always regenerate down here. So it'll give you an option to preview. Don't have that file, but you can, once it's done that, you can replace the variables there. So once you've pulled it up, it'll update the variables.
Hey, Tim, is it Thomas
Yes.
coming in over the top?
Yep, that's all right. Time's up.
Pretty much.
Yep, no worries.
You can pick it up on the chat afterwards if there's anything left, and just the chat will keep going, so we can finish it off there. That would be awesome.
For sure. If you haven't voted, please vote. I don't see there's any poll results yet, so if you haven't voted, please do that. Let me see if I can see that myself. All right, thanks, Thomas.
Thanks, Tim, and
no worries.
Everybody else. We got Jason Clark.